5 biggest profits ever on Storage Hunters. Storage Hunters is a reality TV show from the US that has spread across the world, becoming wildly popular in the UK and Australia, with each having their own spin-off shows. The show was a resounding success, featuring all sorts of characters who usually aren't all that friendly towards each other. Unlike other auction-based shows, the Storage Hunters aren't afraid to get down and dirty, with many episodes featuring at least one showdown between rival teams. Today, we'll highlight a few of the biggest profits ever on Storage Hunters. Also, hit the bell so you never miss an upload from us. Please take the time as well to hit the like button. We love an engaged audience. 5. Dan Hill Tree Surgery Equipment. Dan Hill was one of the Storage Hunters staples from the UK spin-off of the show. His catchphrase of "I'll have some of that" has made him a staple, and the show's success turned him into a bit of an overnight celebrity. He was used to auctions in general when he started up on the show, but said that there are some big differences. Most auctions, he mentioned, allowed potential buyers to do more through inspections, with the units he buys on Storage Hunters being more of a crapshoot since you can't really take a look inside or inspect contents for damage. Hill also touched on the aggressiveness of other stars on the show, who, to be fair, can get really worked up over very little most of the time. He's not in the business to make friends or enemies, preferring to keep out of the drama for the most part, although he does get involved in squabbles here and there. Hill has been a professional dealer since the age of 21, with most of his experience being in furniture. He figured he could make a quick buck when he was invited to join the rest of the team on Storage Hunters, and has done very well for himself since then. One of the biggest finds on air was a container that he won during one episode. It ended up containing a bunch of tree trimming equipment that seemed promising, so he asked around and found that he had net himself a profit of around £9,000. That translated to about $12,000 US and put a huge smile on his face. While tree surgery equipment isn't the most exciting thing to find in a storage unit, there are plenty of people who are probably in the market for one, and we're sure an old pro like Hill would manage to find a buyer who's willing to pay top dollar. He's been in the game for a long time now, and watching him do his thing on the UK version of Storage Hunters is always a ton of fun and informative. That's not bad for a few seconds worth of bidding, and it's finds like his that make Storage Hunters so much fun because you never know what you might find. It's amazing that so many lockers are filled with such expensive items, begging the question of why the previous owner fell behind on payments. Surely, they could just sell some of the contents of their locker if they were strapped for cash. We'd assume it could be that easy for plenty of people who default on payments, but we're glad they do, because the Storage Hunters auctions wouldn't be nearly as entertaining without a few high-ticket items thrown in for good measure. 4. Brandon Laurie Miscellaneous. One of the most rambunctious teams in the original version of Storage Hunters, which first aired in the US, are Brandon and Laurie, affectionately known by fans as Brandory. While we're not about to call them that, they make a pretty good team and are good for a little comic relief or entertainment when they get going. This ends up getting them into trouble more often than not, with one episode seeing Jesse McClure going at Brandon. The fight was broken up, but it seems like they were really pissed off at each other regardless. Many people have said that these fights are staged, but it looked pretty good to us. Brandon ended up having the last laugh at the end of the show anyway, netting over $5,000 on a unit that initially looked like a huge flop. Almost every single container in the unit was totally empty until they found a bag containing a camera and audio equipment that totaled around $7,000 all told. While that's not about to turn them into millionaires, Brandon and Laurie were more than happy with their purchase and took their win for the day. McClure ended up tending to his wounds that day with a potential profit of just over $1,000, which isn't bad, but definitely isn't good enough to warrant a pat on the back like Brandon and Laurie's payday. To make their day even better, they also ended up snagging a first-gen Apple computer, which ended up being one of the first Macs ever built by the company. That makes it a bit of a collectible these days, especially when you consider just how big Apple has become since those days. Unfortunately, there's not much that can be done with an old Mac these days, apart from maybe a little nostalgia or adding it to a collection. It ended up working out to another $500 or so, which isn't great, but doesn't take away from the fact that it helped their daily total and is a really cool thing to find in a random unit. If you're into that sort of thing, of course. Brandon and Laurie seem to have a knack for finding the best lockers of the day, coming out on top most of the time. They feature quite a lot on today's list, taking up every spot from here on out with some real winners. 3. Brandon Lorry Lamborghini. When many people are asked to picture a supercar, the Lamborghini style is one of the first things they imagine. Lamborghini is famous for building some of the most impressive and expensive cars in the world, with the rich and famous adoring showing up in public behind the wheel of one of their vehicles. Brandon and Lori love mystery units with boxes and especially tarps, it seems. They just couldn't pass up the opportunity to be surprised this one time, and their interest paid off. The tarp clearly showed a car with what appeared to be a spoiler akin to a Lamborghini, but you can never be sure what you're getting. Most buyers were happy to throw down, but didn't want to bid too much just in case their potential Lambo turned out to be a big old lemon. After winning the auction, new owners Brandon and Lori couldn't wait to unveil their new prize. They decided to jump on in and take a look in clear view of everyone else, who were all just as intrigued as they were. A quick flip of the tarp's corner flap reveals that they were on the money, with the car ended up being a Lamborghini Countach, which was a massively successful and popular model, which continues its success even today. The orange paint just serves to highlight how impressive their purchase was, with the two quickly becoming the envy of all the other bidders who just couldn't believe their luck. They had a chance to pick up a Lambo at a steal and just weren't confident enough to go all in. Better luck next time, everyone. Deciding that they couldn't miss their moment in the spotlight again, Brandon and Lori take the car out of the locker and completely remove the tarp, letting everyone marvel at just how lucky they were to scoop up their prize. The gloating doesn't stop for a little while, which is expected from just about anyone in this kind of situation, and they lap it up for all it's worth. The final test comes when they finally pop the hood to see if everything's still in working order. They build up the suspense, open it up, and reveal that the engine is there, but it's not a Lambo engine, unfortunately. Their kit car ends up being valued around $10,000, which isn't quite what they were looking for, but still isn't all that bad considering. 2. Brandon Lori Tesla. During one episode, the teams bid on a couple of containers, hoping that they could get lucky. Both containers end up going for a lot of money, with everyone sure that they're the ones coming out on top. Container 1, filled with cardboard boxes, gets bought for $42,000, which isn't a small amount of money no matter who you happen to be. The team hop to and open it up, with everyone being quite tense while the boxes inside are opened and expected to see what they ended up buying. Turns out that they were all full of wristbands, which could potentially be sold to make a profit, but nothing like what it could have been. Container number 2, however, is a little less depressing. Brandon and Lori picked up the second one, sure it was a winner, and they were right. Opening it up reveals a Tesla convertible that's bound to make them a pretty penny. It's a roadster sport and looks pretty impressive. Brandon and Lori decided that they were going to pick this container up no matter what because of the insurance surrounding the container itself. It was insured for over $100,000, so they knew that whatever was in the container had to be big. They swung and hit this purchase out of the park. Even people who don't know much about cars know that a Tesla is a great find and will probably end up working out into a massive profit. This is a perfect example of why it's best to look out for the little things and check the paperwork before throwing your money down. Brandon and Lori's due diligence paid off in spades and left them miles ahead of the competition. 1. Brandon Lori Motorbikes. To cap off the trend of Brandon and Lori absolutely killing it on Storage Hunters, we've got their purchase of a unit that included a couple of awesome motorbikes that definitely earned them a pretty penny. They might not be as fancy as a Lambo or Tesla, but the real upside here is that there are 2 of them. Hell, if the pair decide they don't want to sell them, they can always take them on a tour together. They could have been nice, but we're assuming that they just straight up sold them. That's kind of what they do, right? The bikes weren't immediately obvious, but looked tempting under their tarps in the back of the locker. The 2 hunters ended up paying a decent amount for the locker, but the mystery tarps ended up being real winners. To begin with, Harley-Davidson is a big name in bikes, and the 2 vehicles were both kitted out with chrome and other add-ons that were sure to increase their value in a big way. One issue with lockers is that they can contain stolen goods, meaning that even finds like this one can end up coming back to bite buyers after the fact. Bikes are always big targets for thieves, and after the excitement died down, the question was raised about whether or not they were legit. Brandon and Lori weren't about to take any chances, so they checked the VIN for both bikes just to make sure that they were all good and not stolen or anything like that. Once they came back with confirmation that they were in the clear and weren't in possession of stolen goods, Brandon and Lori celebrated once more. We also feel that we should point out that these bikes were also brand spanking new, further increasing their value as opposed to just a couple of second-handers gathering rust and dust. We don't know exactly how much they ended up getting for the two bikes, but we're sure they ended up making a mint off of them. Harley owners love the brand, and it's iconic enough that just about anyone into bikes would up for picking one up to add to their collection or as a first purchase. Again, we can't imagine why someone would just default on payments for a pair of bikes like this, as well as a Lambo or a Tesla, but it could be that they got locked up or just have more money than they know what to do with. Either way, we can rest easy knowing these bikes are definitely going to go to a good home.